Let's talk about how I built these plant tables for the Shadehouse. So you just watched my father-in-law and I build these 3 tables. And I have to tell you, they made a load of difference in plant management for me out in the Shadehouse. So we'll talk about the build, and then I'm gonna tell you guys how it's improved just the quality of growing experience for me out here. So let's talk about materials. You're gonna need a drill, you're gonna need a hammer, you're gonna need hardware cloth, you're gonna need U-nails, you're gonna need 2x4s in both sizes of 2x4x8 and 2x4x10. Make sure they are pressure treated if they are going outside, or if you plan on getting them wet at all. A circular saw, deck screws, preferably 3-inch, the wire cutters, 5 pieces of 4x1. You may need a few more pieces of wood, so it wouldn't hurt you to buy an extra piece, 2x4x8. And I think that will suffice for all the materials that you're gonna need. Now, it's important to tell you guys the motivating factor of this. I didn't know what I was gonna use for Shadehouse plant management, and I found a Garden Answer on YouTube, and they did a video where they built these tables 4 years ago. I'm happy to say, like, they did a phenomenal job. Very phenomenal job. They are very sturdy, they're a strong build. I made some improvements based on my needs, but I'll tell you the difference of what we did. So Garden Answer, thank you for such a phenomenal video. You've literally made my life so easy out here in my Shadehouse. So let's get down to the build. So in the video you saw, we started with the top frame of the build, and the most important thing you have to keep in mind here is the width that you're gonna make the table. You can make the table 4 feet wide, or you can make it 3 feet wide. You can make it 2 feet wide. You can make it as wide as you want, but stock hardware cloth comes in about 3 feet wide, and they come in 4 feet wide. I'm not sure if they come in a 2 feet wide length, but those are the most common, 3 and 4 feet wide. So initially I told myself that I wanted a 4-foot wide table. I wanted a much larger table that's more surface area. Naturally, I'm like, more plants. I'm glad I went with 3 feet. 4 feet would have just been too wide for the space that I have here. As you can see, I have 3 tables. So we're sporting one right here in the front, and then we have 2 in the back that are side by side. And as my needs grow or my taste in plants changes, maybe I'll take over the rest of the shade house and make it all potted plants. But as you guys have seen in my other shade house improvement videos, a lot of my shade house is also still climbing plants. The build, 3 feet wide. Shade cloth comes in 36 inches, which is 3 feet wide. So you have to make sure that the framing, the midway framing, right, the brace points that you're making for the table have to be 33 inches. Because generally, if you measure the depth of a 2x4, you're pretty much gonna get about 3 inches off of it. Or sorry, 1.5 inches off of it. So if you get that 1.5 inches on each side, that equals 3 inches. So naturally, if you want the hardware cloth to fit appropriately, you need to have 33-inch pieces that are going diagonally, as we saw in the video. Now, I took the recommendation from Garden Answer and I made 9 brace points off the top, including the end pieces that you see here. This is braced all throughout 9 times. I cut total of 11 pieces, 9 for the top and then 2 lower brace points on the side bottom, just for a more sturdy structure. So that totals out to 11 pieces of 33-inch cut 2x4. And the reasoning that they used for 9 pieces on the top, you could get away with less, but the 9 pieces on the top is because you don't know what type of plants you're gonna put. Well, I didn't know what type of plants I was gonna put. They talked about heavier 3-gallon pots going on the surface of the hardware cloth, and the more brace points, obviously the better. If you look behind me, we have a rather giant Monstera Tycon in a large pot that I immediately put back there, so it made sense for me to have more brace points. I'd rather have more brace points. I don't want to have to worry about that later. So I did the 9 brace points at the top and then added the 2 towards the side. Let's talk about the height. I went with 36 inches, 3 feet tall for this. Now you're looking at these arms that I put here. This is an after product of what I decided to do. Obviously, we may get some winds or some torrential downpour, and I didn't want plants just falling over the edge of this structure. So I used 1x2s, 1x2x8. Obviously, this is a 3x8 structure, so I used 1x2x8 to make just kind of a brace point around the edge. And then towards the back, I use some type of rope, because I do film. This is an area that I do film. I didn't want anything permanent where I was reaching over. I use a piece of rope that I just tie across, and it acts as the back brace point. Now you can see I didn't do it towards the back just yet, but I am going to. My larger plants tend to go on the back portions, and then the plants that I'm growing or rehabbing or that I'm keeping an eye on, they go onto this table on the top and on the bottom. So once you build the top, there is an added piece that I saw Garden Answer add, and it's just whatever piece cuts. You'll measure it out and you add a piece in the frame or on the inside of the frame there, and that's for the legs. The legs go into that, and that's just in case you'd like to add wheels to the bottom of your to the legs of your table in the future. Now, if you're like me, I don't really have a need for wheels because my structure isn't so large. It's only 3 tables and they're pretty much stationary. If I was running a full greenhouse and I knew every now and then I'd have to move tables around, then yes, the wheels would make a lot of sense, but I opted out of the wheels. So once the frame was done, we built it obviously upside down. We put the legs on and then drilled them in and then flipped the table right side up. I would definitely recommend you do it that way. From then we added also brace points, and we didn't really measure it out. We just kind of found a couple pieces, made 45-degree cuts or whatever degree cuts based off of not really measuring, and we added 2 additional brace points. And I have to tell you, on one table I skipped out on these brace points, and I feel like the table is just as sturdy as the other ones. Now obviously this adds to it, but because these are stationary, I don't really know if I needed these, but better safe than sorry. And then the hardware cloth. So I bought a full roll of hardware cloth that was 3 by 25 feet. because I was building 3 tables. So each table pretty much got their 8 feet, and I had a little bit of the hardware cloth left over. Now for the hardware cloth, what you will need are U-nails. And the U-nails are made for the hardware cloth. It is a clean way to kind of cinch it down to the wood. That's where your hammer comes into play. You'll take the U-nails, and there are several spots where you just beat those nails into place, and it kind of holds the hardware cloth taut. And then you can cut any excess. So if you do have wire cutters will come in handy. If you do have excess, you just cut it off the end. And if your cuts weren't perfect and you have the hardware cloth kind of protruding off the side edges, just hammer it down. If you're like me, it really doesn't bother me because I'm not running around. It's not snagging my clothing or anything like that. Now, I did decide to build a second shelf on my tables. And that's mainly because I am really, let's call it, passionate about Anthurium at the moment. So I'm growing my collection of Anthurium. I have started to make my own hybrids. And with that, obviously you have loads of seedlings that you need space for as they begin to grow. And you're trying to, if you're anything like me, I'm still in the phase where I like the seedlings to grow out a little bit so I can pick out the ones that I really like based off of certain features. So I needed space for seedlings to grow before I opted in for, put them up for sale or for trades or whatever it is. So the second shelf was crucial for me for seedling trays that I may have. And I can tell you, I have some seedlings at the bottom from my last cross, and thank the Lord I decided to make that second shelf because I had nowhere else to put these seedlings, and they fit snugly down at the bottom here. And I'm only using half of one table right now. I have other seedlings cooking, but as those seedlings they graduate, then I have plenty of room to put them on the bottom shelves. Also, any rehab plants that were kind of graduating from the inside from any greenhouse cabinets or anything that I had on the inside that maybe got a little too big for those, or that I know would just enjoy the outdoor space a bit better, I started to move them out into the Shadehouse, onto the bottom shelves where it's nice doppel shading and they're comfortable. So I added a second shelf. It's up to you if you're gonna add a second shelf. To me, second shelf was definitely a must. I used 5 pieces based on my build, the measurements of my build. I used 5 pieces of 4x1, and I laid them across. Now I did add 2 extra pieces of 2x4, 2 extra 33-inch pieces of 2x4 to act as bracing for the bottom shelf. So I literally just a third of the way in, I put a piece, and then 2/3 of the way in, I put another piece, and then I put my my 1x4 slats across that. So just in case, we got heavier over time, it wouldn't bow or anything like that. I had 2x4 supporting that bottom shelf. And I also added this rail system, which is just, again, 1x2. I added that to the bottom as well, just to make sure any trays didn't fly off, just in case any critters or my dogs are running around here, they didn't bump into the tray and then I lose a whole tray of seedlings or something of the likes. So in my opinion, this was a good call. I tried to explain it to my wife. Oh yeah, I want to put a brace, and she was like, no, you're gonna mess up the vibe. And when she saw it, she was like, oh yeah, good choice. So this, if you're thinking about it, this is a good choice, because I can't afford for my plants to just fall over the edge here. And that's the Shadehouse tables in a nutshell. They were very easy to build with 2 people. Now, if I were building them alone, I could see a little bit, it would take me probably more than double the time. 2 people was just way easier to get it done, and holding certain pieces and screwing them in. You can opt out of the mesh or hardware cloth top. I did do some research and I found some plastic toppers. They were just way more expensive than the hardware cloth. So we're talking, this hardware cloth maybe cost me $66, and that covered 3 tables. When I was looking at the plastic toppers, they were maybe for a 2x4 or something of the like section, they were about $50 or more for each. So can you imagine spending $200 per table for plastic toppers? Like, to me, that it really wasn't worth it. So the hardware cloth does just fine. And if you buy smaller pieces, then you're spending $30 to $60. I mean, obviously the more tables, the more money it's going to be, but you can find 3x, I think, 10 in stores, which is enough for one table, and it's drastically less expensive than just one 2x4 section of plastic topper. So hardwood cloth worked for me. It's good. I have no complaints. It's been raining quite often down here in South Florida. I'm talking like every day we get rain. It rained just a little earlier, and this is easy. The plants, the drainage is perfect for the plants. As you guys know, I use a chunky mix, so I've had no issues. It's great on drainage. No issues with supporting the plants, the small or the large ones, towards the back here. So the hardwood cloth works just fine, but you do what you want with your build. And that's all for the build. It's fairly simple. If you feel like I missed anything, or if you have questions on any portion of this, just drop a comment down below. I will leave you guys with a short just video tour of kind of how I have my plant set up right now. It is not done. It is a mess, so please bear with me. I'm still looking for time to come out here and organize all of my plants. I kind of have a mixture of phylos and stuff all over the place, and then you can see the Monstera and other plants towards the back. So bear with me on that. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you for joining me on the Shadehouse table build.